Hello YouTubers, it's me again. It's a beautiful 70 degrees out in the mid-Atlantic. Great day, but the pollen is fucking out, so I'm fucking dying a little bit. I wanted to stop in and talk about something I was looking over a little bit. There was a thread, I think yesterday, on heavy assault complaining again. And it's pretty much your run-of-the-mill shit. The person's main complaint was about assimilate and adrenaline shield, and I really probably need to sit down and do an entire video on the state of adrenaline shield. I've talked about it a lot in some QAs and stuff when I've been asked about the adrenaline nerfs from last year, which were pretty heavy nerfs. You know, it did end up being like a 43 or 44% nerf to the return on energy for the shield. And that equates to about 112, what is it, 112.5 at a baseline for a return on a kill. And then I think with Assimilate, it's like it gets you up to like 157.5 or something. But remember, that is with a headshot, and even being in a top 1% of aimers, that's still like being a 40-40 player. That means I'm still headshot killing people less than half the time. So anyway, I wanted to go back and see. This got me thinking about the adrenaline shield a little bit. And I had some gameplay sitting around from about February. It's about 5 hours of gameplay, all heavy assault, all adrenaline shield on various factions. And I wanted to go in and see, you know, how often I even have the full adrenaline shield in its current iteration, right? So I queued up some videos. I tweeted about some of this shit, but the real impetus for this was I watched the first 16 minutes of the one gameplay. It was like the first thing is like an hour and 15 minutes or something, but I watched the first like 16 minutes, and in 2 fights, I think I was at 2 bases. And how I was doing this was I had to first go through and, you know, figure out how many engagements I got in, right? So then I can go back and see, you know, well, what was the shield? Because it was just too much for me to do all 3 at once. So I was like, all right, I'll watch it through the first time, and let me just count the amount of engagements that I get into. And I'm like 16 minutes of the way. I got distracted by some shit on the Discord about some Battlefield stuff. And I was away from it for like an hour. Then I came back, I was like, all right, in 16 minutes of gameplay, I had 54 engagements. So that's roughly like what, 3.3, 3.4 something engagements per minute, you know, getting in gunfights with people. And from that, I noticed in about half those engagements of the 54, I never even turned my shield on. And I was thinking, well, why did that happen? And it was like, well, and I got back to looking, I went back through, and I was like, well, I positionally killed half these people and never had to turn my shield on. So standing at the right place, holding the right angles, pushing, playing, you know, varying between passive and aggressive in certain spots and stuff like that. Just general flow around the base and how I'm moving and the strong points that I'm holding, where I'm standing, made an absolutely huge difference in whether I even had to turn my shield on or not. So with that said, like half the engagements of those 54, I never even turned my shield on. So then I was going back and was like, well, maybe I'm a bad example of this because I position so well that I don't get forced into having to use the shield. And in a case like that, like where you're positioning so well, you don't even have to turn on your shield, it comes out to be like, you know, what it would have made no difference whether I was playing heavy or not. And it probably would have been easier if I was playing like with an AR or something and not an LMG, which are just by definition worse accuracy-wise. So then I was like, okay, I'm positioning really well. And then, okay, so that's about half the fights. Don't even turn the shield on. half of that, so about 25% of the time, I have full everything. So I'm at you have 1450 total, but there is a 25 activation cost. So in reality, you have 1425. And some people don't factor that in, but it's important. Because even when you're not at full, even when you're not at maxed out 1450, there's times where, having to activate and use that cost to just turn it back on again can cost you a death. So like I said, the 25% of the remaining time, I had full everything. And then the other 25% of the time that's left was somewhere like either, I didn't whittle it down, but it was something less than ideal. So I had like maybe half the shield or even less than half. And a lot of those times it's very low, because when I get put into situations a lot of times where I have no shield left, I'm still coming out and peaking. I'm peaking from full green or not even waiting for blue, because that catches a lot of people. A lot of people will come and think they have earned the kill on you, and if you just repeak even with green and you aim well enough, that it doesn't matter, because when someone's running at you with their gun down sprinting, it's 8-9 times out of 10 it's going to be a free kill. So then I got back to looking at all that. I'm trying to think of what I could take away from just that. And keep in mind, it's 16 minutes out of like 5 hours and stuff. But what I could glean from that is I started to think about how much of a difference being able to position makes in a game like that. And then I was like, well, most of the people I know that still haven't improved over time, one of their biggest problems fundamentally as a player is positioning. They struggle with knowing how to move, when to sprint, when not to sprint, where to stand, how to stand, what angles to hold, reading the map. I probably spend over half the time I am playing the game looking at the mini map. And I see so many players that they have the small map. They do dumb shit, like they have the small map completely zoomed out. Like you're giving up so much. When I can't tell you how many people I've killed with the mini map in that game. It's got to be some obscene amount. And then I was like, then I got to how many engagements I was having in that short time. So I got into 54 gunfights in about 15, 16 minutes. And you watch some people, like, if you ever watch like a generic normal player or someone who's like not very good at the game, they just wander around and do fuck off forever. And then even if it's sometimes someone that I've talked to people like this, they're trying to improve at the game, but they're always in pop. And this is what I get back to with one of my biggest things ever is if you're always sitting in pop, you can talk till you're blue in the face about how you're trying to get better at the game, or you're trying, but fundamentally, you're never ever going to get better at the game, and you're not ever going to approach the best players in the game or get anywhere near them if you're just sitting in pop all the time. Because sitting in pop all the time, you're not learning over half the game. And that's positioning, because when you're in pop, your positioning matters a whole lot less. It just does. You have more guys around you. There's less angles for you to be concerned about. You don't really have to learn how to move that much because, again, a lot of the angles you can assume are safe because you have pop. There's a lot of stuff you don't really have to check for. You don't have to be aware of. So I think a lot of these people get away with running small map and just shift Wing around because they're always sitting in a blob of fucking retards that they're playing with. And then I watch these guys come into the game and talk about how they want to improve and stuff, and then I go watch their gameplay, and every fucking day I'm watching them, they're sitting in a zerg somewhere staring at a spawn room. Which is a thing I get back to is like doing ops with your outfit and everything is cool and all, and that's cool if it's something you do like maybe a couple times a week, and that's how you want to have fun. You're just hanging out with your bros and everything. But fundamentally, if you're actually serious about getting better at the game, doing ops is not making you better at the game, fundamentally. Like from an aim, positioning, like becoming individually a better player, which I've always contested If you have an outfit full of people who are motivated to be better individually, the sum of all the parts is that much greater. You know, it's why outfits like DA and Recursion and AC back in the day, you know, you can do so much more with fewer players because they're all individually 2-3 standard deviations better than the normal player. You don't need to drop 96. You can have a squad of guys hold off 48, 96, something like that. Much to the frustration of the blob players in the game. And you see a lot less of those players now because most of them have all quit. And rightly so, because the game's dog shit. But from my days in playing with those players, almost every single one of those players was mechanically sound individually. Some of them weren't the best aimers. I played with a lot of mediocre aimers, even in AC. You know, guys that would top out around 25% accuracy, sometimes 30. But then you had the guys at the top end that were shooting for like Maxi and Busy and them, you know, always shooting 40-40 everything. But there was a lot more of the people in the middle. And I started out that way in the middle, and I was like, I want to get to where those guys are. But what made it easier for me to get there was learning how to stand and where to stand and getting in these engagements and practicing gunfights. To get back to the engagement thing, I have 54 engagements or gunfights with people in 16 minutes. That's a lot of fucking practice in 16 minutes. Now, there's 5 hours of that gameplay for me to go over. How many engagements do you think I'm going to have in that? Now, you take that number and multiply it by how many hours I have in the game, and that's how I've played the game for probably since I've been playing the game almost exactly the same way since about late 2013, early 2014. That's a lot of fucking practice, right? So that's one key difference between me and players like me and a lot of you guys who are floating around in zergs talking the big game about you want to get better at I don't know why the fuck you want to get better at this game now. It's a complete waste of time, but you say that. So I see you're not getting anywhere, you know? And that's why. Stop sitting in fucking pop, okay? And second of all, you can play PlanetSide a lot, but I think a lot of why I position well and I have good in-game sense and awareness is I've been playing games like this for at minimum 20 years now. I've always been a Battlefield player. I've played every Battlefield game, and Battlefield games have been instrumental in, even when I wasn't a good aimer, you know? Even when I wasn't a good aimer, when I wasn't a good... I didn't know how to position well. Having all that time, like 20 years worth of learning how to position in a game with multiple opponents in an area, that's invaluable. And I think it's part of the reason why I've been able to be as successful as I have been in this game. And that shit still transfers to other shit. Now, it's sometimes less relevant in smaller game mode type stuff, like arena shooters and stuff. But any game that comes out that has, 32 plus players, and even in the Battlefield game modes that are like 16v16 or something like that, I can walk right into those games and do whatever. I might have to learn a map for a little bit, but, we're all playing a PlanetSide game that has the same base layouts for 10 plus fucking years, and we know the general flow of battle and everything. So yeah, it's a lot of practice, but you're not getting that practice and you're not getting those engagements. You're not learning how to get better and analyzing what you're doing when you're sitting in pop all the time. And I will say till the day I die that positioning is the most critical factor in determining whether you're going to have success or not in that game. You can be one of the best aimers in the game, and I've seen a lot of people with really good aim or, competitive aim that can't position worth a fuck, and you just wipe the floor with them. You're in the situation where a lot of those guys that I killed in that 16 minutes probably don't have better aim than me, but they're good enough to kill me in a gunfight, but my positioning it completely negates whatever aim they have. So just something to think about. I'm going to go on and continue watching this stuff and see what else I can glean and maybe have some like real numbers to go through in terms of the adrenaline shield stuff. And maybe I will do an adrenaline video at some point, talking about it in depth a little bit more. And then, yeah. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I appreciate it. I will talk to you in the comments later.